Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today we have a special video here for you. I've got a special guest here with me today, Mr. Dudley Brown from the National Association for Gun Rights, and we're going to have a chat and kind of tell you how his organization got started, talk a little bit about N.A.G.R, and I think this will be a fun video, man. Thanks for coming down and visiting.
Thanks for inviting me. Sure enjoy it.
The gun rights world has really been turned upside down in the last couple of years. I think it goes without saying that we're not going to get far down that rabbit hole, but I believe it's important to acknowledge that a lot of Americans that are gun people, many of us, we love the Second Amendment. Some of us don't always know how to fight the battles for the Second Amendment. And what we'll do is we'll tend to want to support various gun groups who are well-connected and can really help us dial in our efforts to know what we're fighting for, what we're fighting against, when we're fighting against it. So all of those answers are provided by groups like N.A.G.R. And the Second Amendment world has been turned upside down these last couple of years. If you haven't seen what's going on, there is a very, very well-known gun rights organization that is in the news for a lot of crazy stuff and has been for quite some time. So it's always interesting to learn about gun rights organizations and understand where they stand and what they're about and their principles and their values. And that's really what I want this video to be about today. I know we've talked about a little bit of this off camera, but in the world of 2A advocates, especially in the lobbying world and in the gun rights organization world, you're a bit of an outlier, Dudley, because you actually love guns. The first time I met you, I remember you talking about machine guns and you going out and, shooting all kind of machine guns. And I think that generally speaking, most gun rights organizations are not going to be quite so out there about hey, let's go shoot some machine guns. So you're totally a 110% 2A dude. Hey, machine guns for everybody, that sort of thing.
It's why I got into this, why I started doing it. I've been a gun person my whole life. I grew up in South Dakota and was, bird hunter. And then, of course, in college started shooting a lot of pistol and at that point then ARs, and then got into machine guns. And frankly, it's what I spend my time on.
You never look back.
Yeah. When I have extra money, I don't generally look at doing anything else with it other than investing. I want to buy guns and ammo and a new scope. And my weekends are shooting.
You're a gun guy.
My weekends are shooting.
That's right. You're a gun guy.
My weekdays are shooting too. So
yeah. So let's start towards the beginning. So you've been in this world, this advocacy world, over 30 years. So what made you want to do this?
I hate to say a professional in politics because it makes you sound like you're a politician, and I'm not. I've never been elected to office, but 1993 is when I started lobbying the gun issue, and as a living as well as a passion. And I would say it's a living, but I really wasn't paid a living wage. I had to do all kinds of things to supplement that. And it was really because I watched in the Colorado legislature. I watched as the NRA was handing politicians A ratings after dinner mints, and even though those are the people who had voted against us. And I started this struggle working on issues like shall issue concealed carry and constitutional carry. That's really when I started lobbying. That was the major issue at the time. And I watched as the NRA was asking me to buy dinner for them on their dime or with politicians who were voting against us, who were killing our shall issue concealed carry bills. And I'm like, no, I came to, kick politician butt, not kiss it. And that's when I started Rocky Mountain Gun Owners in Colorado. And then in 2006, I was approached by a friend and mentor who had the National Association for Gun Rights, had built it up. He was the founder. And he came to me and said that he's a pro-gun, but he's not a gun person. And he really wanted somebody to run the national group who was a gun person. And you made that point earlier, a gun person who's actually the head of a lobbying organization. I think it makes sense, but that's just not been true for most. I don't know any of them who shoot competitively. I'm not claiming I'm great. But
you love to shoot.
I love to shoot. Right nowadays, my major passion is precision rifle. And boy, that's a deep rabbit hole.
Oh yeah. We definitely aren't going to go down that rabbit hole in this video. Maybe in a future video.
Right.
Now, some people have claimed, and I've heard this around some people have called me and said, "Hey Eric, this Dudley guy, his methods are kind of a little bit different than what we would typically employ." I mean, so discuss N.A.G.R's methods on how they get things done and why maybe there's a bit of controversy there. Would you mind talking about it a bit?
Well, and I'll plead mea culpa to most of that. We are very different. We use a very different strategy. We actually spell our strategy out on our website. You can actually look, and it's not this naive pie in the sky. If we just get a little more awareness of the Second Amendment, like, really, Americans don't know what guns are? I mean, explain that to me. That always drives me a little bit crazy.
Politics are downstream from culture, though. So, it is important to change culture in a way that hopefully ends up changing politics. I mean, look at Prohibition. We talked about that last night at dinner. But it's like Prohibition, it hit a brick wall. It got to a point where, all right, all the feds and the sheriffs and all the law enforcement were drinking. Everyone was drinking. And it's like, what are we doing? I'm in here drinking, and what am I going to arrest the people serving me alcohol? After a while, culturally, alcohol was just such a wanted thing in society that they had to just eventually admit defeat.
But if you do a poll of American citizens, the average voting age American citizens all across the country, and all the polling data shows that a majority of Americans, sometimes almost 2/3 of Americans, would ban semi-automatic magazine-fed rifles. And of course, it depends on how you word it, but that it ranges. It's pretty heavily. Well, why in the world aren't they completely banned in America? Well, frankly, because we are a very vocal minority. Now, are gun owners a majority in America? Yes, but probably not AR owners. Or let's just say semi-automatic rifle owners. And so our view is okay, great. We should try to convert people. Your neighbor, you should talk to your neighbor and tell them why the Second Amendment is important, because,
kind of a grassroots ambassadorship, talking to people that are close to you. Sort of thing.
The old saying is that when seconds count, they're only minutes away.
That's true.
Law enforcement they're really forensic historians, right? They just draw a line around the body and take the report. And that's no dig on law enforcement. That's just a simple fact. And so
the fact is they can't be everywhere at the same time.
They can't.
Not everyone has a personal police officer that stays attached to their hip. I mean, that's the reality, right. Is that, and they're actually not even constitutionally beholden to protect us.
That's right. And so you have to take that security on yourself. If you want to protect your family and yourself and your loved ones, you've got to do it, or your community for that matter. So that's the concept. Well, do you really care if your neighbor is anti-gun? I don't really care if my neighbor is anti-gun. I have a couple neighbors, one side, yes, and they're anti-gun. It's okay. I don't really care that they're anti-gun. I just care that they don't vote for politicians who want to remove my rights. And so we concentrate on one thing. When John Dillinger was asked, "Why'd you rob banks?" he said, "Easy, that's where the money is." And so if you want politicians to stop voting for bans on your guns, or voting for regulations, even marginal, you have to go to elections to force that. And you have to make them understand that their vote is going to come back to haunt them if they vote wrong. Now, that's a tall order when you're talking U.S. Senator. Not that tall an order for a state representative.
Especially if you can get, a lot of people to call them and send emails and really flood their inbox with, "Hey, we're really pissed about this." And they start going, "Well, holy crap, these people are angry," right? But they don't necessarily know where it came from. They may not know that.
You make sure they know where it came from. So we always make sure they know. and understand they do politicians look at you when you're an advocate and you're pushing on, for instance, something like constitutional carry or against the gun control. They look and say, that pressure is coming from a group. And they're focusing on me now, and they can generate a lot of pressure. If they can do that right now during a legislative season, they could do the same kind of thing during election season when it really matters to them. That scares politicians, especially, frankly, Republicans, or the people who should be with us but often aren't. And the worst thing you can do as a Second Amendment advocate is to walk up to a politician and say, I need your vote on this controversial issue. However, I'm going to vote for you no matter what, because they always vote Republican. You just put a sign on your forehead that says, I'm a loser, don't listen to me. I mean, that's the one thing you have on a politician is your vote. And if you're somebody like you have a lot of people who follow you, who follow N.A.G.R. and listen to us. And so we kind of drag them that way and say, look, we'll tell you what's happening in your state capital, what a politician is doing to you. You might not like to hear from it about it and all the details, but we'll tell you, we'll give you the no BS look. Yeah. And that's a tough thing for people to swallow, because some people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear, oh, well, I got all Republican elected officials, I'm fine.
People are very, very hesitant, I believe, to really have actual discourse about the important topics that surround their life. It's almost like they want to defer it to someone else, and they just want that easy ability to say, well, I voted Republican, so therefore it's no problem. So when you look at gun rights organizations, right, and I'm not trying to dig on anybody, because, look, for me, like as we discussed before, like I'm a Second Amendment guy. So for me, like I care about our rights, and I care about any way that we can facilitate, and make better on our rights and gain background that we've lost. But it's almost like what you're doing is like, hey, we're going to put on the gloves and get in the ring and let's go. All right, you don't want to play ball. Well, we're gonna make you regret that, pal. And then on the other end, it's almost like, oh, we're going to reach across the aisle. Let's buy dinner. Let's smooze each other. And let's, like the traditional lobbyist mentality of, well, we have to kiss their butts and we have to give them special privileges and send them on trips and send them places and put together. It's like, now, is that to say that that's not a useful political tool that hasn't been used for many, many, many decades, if not centuries? Probably since the dawn of time, people in power have had a carrot dangled in front of their face by someone else that has power, but maybe doesn't have the same power they do. So we have to reasonably at least assume that what we are accomplishing with N.A.G.R. it's important to note that that's a very effective tactic, right? They need to know that their position can be compromised at any point if they don't do what they say they're going to do. We have to hold these people, make them beholden to their constituents.
Well, and I will say that, of course, you should be polite to other people, period. And we don't advocate anybody using threats of violence or anything like that to a politician. We do think, though, political violence, which is elections, is a very interesting tool, and yes, it's about the only thing you hold over them. So
if it's one thing they love is power, and if they think that power could go away, they're like, all right, let's change our. So all right, we're going to change here.
so to get back to the concept that and what realistically what N.A.G.R. does.
Sure.
So we're a 501c4 nonprofit that's based in Northern Colorado, but we have offices around the country in Washington, D.C., and we have staff all around the country, but most of our employees are in Colorado. Right now, I think we're about 72 employees. We do everything within our office, including opening mail and processing the mail. In fact, my son works in the mail room, just like everybody.
He's a sharp kid. There. And he's running your video stuff.
Yeah,
he's doing great.
He's an editor, and
he's doing great.
He's learning a lot. And then you add, we have, of course, our political division, who handle all of the field teamwork and Washington, D.C. lobbyist. We have a real sharp lobbyist in D.C. named Hunter King. We have people who are in our office that do the marketing side, that run our direct mail program. It seems weird in modern politics that we actually send out mail, but we physically send out real mail. and that's a major part of fundraising. We do.
It costs money to send that mail out. I mean, you got to raise funds to get the mail campaigns together,
and it's a process. We also have, of course, internet. We have a very large Facebook presence, and we've just recently started building our YouTube channel. We've never really had one and never used it except for occasional videos, and now we just decided to do it. I kicked off a channel that's mostly guns, just playing around on the range, and we'll use some of the footage we shot yesterday in our video for the Range Rogues, is what we're calling it. But we have a podcast. We have a few things like that. And in fact, I know my guys from the podcast are desperate to have you come on. So
we'll put that together.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk with Hunter and learn more about this lobbying, how it works, and try to get an idea of like, you know, the political levers and how they get pulled. And it's a really weird environment. Like, the United States is a unique place. I mean, our founding fathers were some pretty genius people, and they put in some very distinctive checks and balances that are globally pretty unique thing.
Yeah,
I mean, so we have a very unique style of government that when it is, let's just say, ran the way that the founding fathers intended, it's I think about as close to a foolproof system as you could just about ask for. But sometimes, you know, you have to kind of remind them who's in charge. So it seems to me that y'all are great at that.
You always have to remind them. And that's why we actually have a PAC. Now, we have a federal affiliated PAC that can donate directly to federal candidates. But the other part we have is a super PAC. And that's an interesting concept many people aren't familiar with. A super PAC is a independent expenditure committee that is the first of its type in America. We run the only gun rights only super PAC that's ever existed in America, as far as we can tell. We don't know that anyone's ever done it. And what a super PAC can do is run a campaign against a candidate or for, not in conjunction. It's not tied together with that candidate. It has to do it independently, but it can tell voters, don't vote for this U.S. senator, or don't vote for this candidate, or do vote for this candidate. And now, of course, we're very careful about that. We don't like to credential people we haven't tested.
Of course.
And
because that's a principled approach.
Yes.
Of course.
Well, we have to. I mean, we somebody can answer our survey, our candidate survey of 14 questions and come up with the right answers, but how do we know they're not lying? Well, if they're a U.S. senator and they actually voted on some of that, we know if they're lying on some of them. So
I have to mention something in this video, and I hope that maybe I'm not calling anyone out here, but I would love to have Thomas Massey come on my channel, and let's just do like a 30-minute civics lesson, so people can kind of get an idea of how these things work. And, you know, Massey, I know you're friends with Massey, and I've met Massey a few times, and he's a very interesting fellow. I really appreciate a guy like him. And so
he's one of the few guys in Congress who's a real gun person.
Right.
And
he is.
He's a real gun person.
He is. Yeah. He is. But due to the fact that you associate closely with people like Massey, that tells me that you're in with the right people, because I can verify what you said, like that. Yes, like a guy like Massey, you can totally, he's absolutely pro-gun, right? And you know, one thing I can appreciate about Massey, and I think it relates to what you talked about, like with N.A.G.R, and let's say, all right, we have to know what this person's voting record is. Massey's always been a real big proponent for like, hey, if it's a bill, let's vote on this bill. No more like bunching things together and not having a recorded vote. Isn't that kind of a snaky way for them to do business? I mean, look at this big package it just passed. What, 15 trillion or whatever it was they just passed and gave themselves a 23% raise. Oh, but then also snuck VAWA into this bill. I mean, like things like that. Isn't that just snaky? Isn't that disingenuous? Isn't it dishonest? Like, shouldn't we try to put people, in places of power that can call people, like, all right, so Thomas is calling out these people on this, but who else is? Like, I mean, even Trump called Massey a third-rate Republican, and that's a low blow, because I feel that Massey's views are actually very, what I would consider very
well. And the
good.
reason that happened is because Thomas actually won a recorded vote on one of the biggest spending packages in American history. And
isn't it? It is. Well, shouldn't we know
you
where
should
people
know
stand?
how people vote, and
Yes.
it's BS to say.
But it's related to what you're saying about, hey, you got to know someone's voting record to know if you can,
Yes, there are people we hold up as heroes. Our general rule is if you can't say something bad about a politician, don't say anything at all. And that's a pretty good principle to live by. But there are a few exceptions to that rule. I label in the House. I certainly label Chip Roy in that line as Thomas. There are a few others who are pretty good.
Rand.
You go on the Senate side. Certainly Rand Paul has been a stalwart on our issues, as has Senator Mike Lee from Utah. Those two have been the stalwarts for liberty in the Senate since they've got there. In fact, both of them had knockdown, drag-out primaries. Senator Lee actually primaried a sitting Republican U.S. Senator in Utah, which, if you know much about the state of Utah, you wait your turn and you follow the order. So it was pretty impressive. And Mike Lee's one of the sharpest legal scholars you'll ever see in Congress.
I will say I was a Ron Paul guy. Definitely.
Okay, well,
I'm very much a Ron Paul type of guy. I really appreciate a lot of his views, and I feel like we wouldn't be in these terrible situations we are now if maybe we'd listened to him a few decades ago.
I was a delegate for Ron Paul in 2012 National Convention, and I don't agree with Ron Paul on everything.
I don't either.
But
not big on his foreign policy.
Yeah, but he's a brilliant man who was a visionary. So now to go, and that's an interesting segue.
And Rand's sharp too.
Oh, most certainly. That's an interesting segue, though. Rand and Mike Lee, and those are good. Like, I don't know, if you look at our staff, the people who work for N.A.G.R on staff.
How many people do you have on?
Yeah, I think we have somewhere around 72 full-time staff members right now.
Okay.
And we certainly have part-time and we have consultants, but that's a high watermark for us. I think this is the largest we've been since 2014. We were about that same size. And if you look at those people, they probably could be split amongst two categories of the employees. Homeschooled Christian conservatives who either homeschool or were homeschooled, and what you would call a traditional Christian conservative. And I came from that world. And then the Rand Paul libertarians, now Bassey, and somewhere in between. And what's great is they meld together to make I call it diverse, a good liberty group. And so these are largely, I'm the old man there, a lot of young people, they're in their 20s and just sharp people. If I could brag a bit and set aside all humility, I do have a talent at noticing people who are principled and skilled and learn. And
I think in this world, especially when it comes to people that we're going to trust to protect our gun rights, our elected representatives, that's an important thing to be able to kind of put out there and go, hey, I see potential in this person. I mean, like Massey, he's the head of the 2A caucus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he started that, right? That was his thing, wasn't it?
Well, he restarted it. Is the way to put it.
So it had kind of died in the
Paul
water.
Brown, a congressman from Georgia here, was the 2A caucus chair and handed it over to Thomas.
So you're in a unique position now. So that, basically you've put in all this work for 2+ decades, almost 3 decades. And so now you're in a position where you've got, you got 72 staff members. They're all putting in great work. You're putting in great work. But now you can get out and promote. You can get out and make content. You can have,
Be clear, though, they're all smarter than me. They're all more talented than me.
You've got very talented people that can help you.
I'm the guy who is in front of the camera, unfortunately, and they make me look good for sure. And it's due to them. It's not, and frankly, the members. And, we have millions of members who ardently believe in what we're doing and the mission, and so And we see our real mission as equipping gun owners with the tools to hold politicians accountable and advance our rights. And we're real focused on that. We try not to get too far down the weeds in anything else. Almost everything feeds that overall mission. We have a foundation now that's grown quite a bit. And that 501c3 foundation we use for legal cases and filing lawsuits. There are other groups who file lawsuits, and we're happy to help. In some cases, we go it alone. We sued the city of San Jose just a few months ago over their ludicrous new gun controls. And that's one we're, right now anyway, going it alone, and that's fine. But we try and feed that central mission of equipping gun owners with strategy, equipping them with the tools for defending their liberties. And that's how to go and hold politicians accountable and put pressure on them.
Absolutely.
And that's what wins the day. And I like to look back at the big battles and say, did we play a role? The big battle that happened that was in 2013 after the Newtown shooting.
Yeah.
And it was a big battle in the U.S. Senate. And if you look at the filings that Congress requires of all lobbying groups, N.A.G.R. spent more than all other gun groups combined on that lobbying effort to defeat Toomey Mansion, and which was the big gun control package that came out at that time.
Isn't it a weird paradigm to look at, all right, like the Toomey Mansion bill, all right, that got shot down, right?
It got defeated, but right. Eric, every single pundit in Washington, D.C., every U.S. senator,
they wanted to pass it,
even gun control, even pro-gun groups had given up on it, said something's going to pass. And we tried some, and we were young then. We tried some very unique things to defeat it, and nobody can really claim that they played a role in any of that to any great extent except us. NRA was doing things behind the scenes. We're now finding out they actually were involved in trying to pass it. Alan Gottlieb from the Second Amendment Foundation came out and publicly said that we should vote for it. He was encouraging senators to vote for Toomey Mansion because he said it's the best we can get, and he negotiated the deal as if he was some player. And that was all over the news. See, I mean, I think they let go of that later because they realized they're getting burned on that.
Therein lies the issue, right? Is like, we don't send gun rights organizations to Capitol Hill to compromise. Like, we don't want them to go, well, this is the best we got. Well, we had to give them this. Well, did you really? You chose to give them that. You didn't fight hard enough, right? Like, if you give someone some concession, some compromise, well, you're giving up, right? And the problem with compromise, like the issue with making a deal with the devil, is that the devil always wins. The devil will always have the upper end of that bargain. When you sign a contract with the devil, he's going to win. And that's how politics is. Like, if you compromise, they're always going to make sure that that compromise is in their favor. The antis are going to make sure it's in their favor.
And they know we're doing it. I mean, all the politicians know that the NRA has been a deal cutter. And
that
decades.
Almost motivates them to want to work with them because then they know, hey, we can come to the table.
And they know they're going to NRA. Almost everybody's going to get an A rating from anyway. The NRA said Harry Reid was a true champion of the Second Amendment. That's on video.
Now, I will say this. All right, Toomey Mansion shot down. Great. Win. Okay. And then look at this. We almost have to kind of think, all right, is this some principled stance that Joe Manchin took when he said, oh, I'm not going to nuke the filibuster? Or is it because that Joe Manchin, now this is getting outside of gun rights, but it's still important, and I'm going to articulate why.
The filibuster is very important in gun rights.
So is it because Manchin realized that nuking the filibuster could also be weaponized against them after we took, back over, maybe the majority in 2022? So was it a strategic move, or was his conscience get the better of him, and he was like, you know what, we shouldn't support nuking the filibuster no matter who's in charge because it goes completely against, the checks and balances that our country is founded on. So on one end, you have to think, all right, well, did he nuke it because it was the right thing to do, or did he nuke it because it was strategically the best move?
He voted right on that, or took the right position.
Right. But was it a principled position?
It was the right position to oppose getting rid of the filibuster We believe, because the filibuster is one of the tools that has kept the Second Amendment intact. But in fact, the reason he's doing it is because the state of West Virginia, even though it's had Dem majorities, they don't perform that way. They vote for conservatives, right, and they vote Republican, and he knows that, and he knows he's going to have tough re-elections, and who knows? Maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll change to be a Republican, which I would think, oh, great.
I saw
a lefty
an article,
Republican? We don't need any more of those.
I did see an article where, he was kind of hinting that he might change parties. And so, look,
he's played that game too.
The weird thing about all this, though, is like when you look at how fragile this all is. Oh, well, I'll just put this letter next to my name and I'll appeal to these people, or I'll put this letter next to my name. It's like, I think that society has erroneously gotten away from judging people as people and judging politicians by their voting record and not by some letter next to their name. And I think that the sooner that our society starts to see that these parties sort of merge and blend and often weaponize government against us in very similar ways. Now, the only thing that changes is who their perceived enemy is, but really, who loses at the end of the day? Right. You and me, like average people, gunners, right? Especially those of us that are into guns and stuff. I mean, I'm 37 years old. All right, I've seen presidents come and go. I've voted a bit, so look, for me, I've seen the political wheels turn. I've seen the political levers turn and change. And it's like, is that to say that I guess I'm at a midlife point or so, right? I mean, what's the average age men live in America? What, about 75 years or so, I think is the average in America. So, yeah, I'm at like a midlife point, right? But where do I look at the middle of my life and say, okay, have I really been represented? Have I really gotten any, ground gained back over these perceived losses? Well, they're not perceived losses. They're legitimate losses, right? And when you start to look at the holistic political, machine, you start to go, well, wait a minute, the stuff going into this machine and these levers get pulled and then some product pops out on the other side in a little box, that ain't necessarily what represents me, and it's not necessarily what I feel is, part of my, needs and wants and my liberty and my freedom and the things that I hold dear and the most important to me.
Right.
Now, granted, I may be an outlier in that maybe I'm just that much more pro-gun than the average person. And I'm willing to say and admit that maybe I'm just that much more pro-gun than the average person. I have the ability and humility to say that maybe I'm just really, 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 really pro-gun and the average person isn't that pro-gun. But
flex.
The entire time that I've ran this channel, we've been making the YouTube channel here for almost 14 years. We've seen a lot of things come and go and a lot of ideas come and go, lots of content creators come and go, but we've been at this for 14 years. So I'd like to think we've got a little skin in the game, at least in the standpoint that we have been relatively consistent in the things that we talk about and the positions that we have. And without going too far down that rabbit hole, I guess I'll just say that we've probably seen the levers of that political machine fail more often than they succeed. All right, and you look at all the gun control. Now, we're going to get in this in a future video. I didn't want this to go crazy in this particular. We're going to expand on this later. But look at all the NRA supported gun control that's passed over the last 3 or 4 decades. I mean, this isn't exactly a mystery that these things have occurred. We can objectively and factually look at that and say, yes, they were involved in X, Y, Z. And when you start to look at the big picture, you kind of think, well, here's this large lobbying group that is supposed to be doing something good for us, and that's not the case. There's negatives that are happening. And is it because they're making it happen, that they're pulling those levers in a way that allows them to play the game? And is it just a game to them? That this isn't about liberty and freedom and natural rights and gun ownership. That this is about their ability to have their hand on the lever and go, ooh, this is fun. When I pull this, it puts money in my pocket.
Another video, I think.
Yes.
I do believe
N.A.G.R.
Yeah. I do believe, just to get back to, what we do, the one component that I don't think we talked about was state level groups. And we like to support state level gun groups in a number of different ways, and wherever we can, when we're applying pressure, for instance, in a state, we want to come help a state group. And that doesn't mean we're going to come in and help them compromise. There are a lot of state level gun groups, frankly, who get drunk on the machinations of power and love to be a part of it. And so yeah, we're not going to help those kind of guys, or we're certainly not going to help them do the wrong thing. But when they're trying to pass constitutional carry or oppose gun control, we're happy to set aside any differences and play on the same team. Good. And sometimes it's we have resources to bring to bear, and we certainly have lists, and we like to do that. To me, that's just playing like a team, and we're happy to be on the same team when it's heading the right direction. In other cases, frankly, we're not going to be on the same team as some other groups because, for instance, Toomey Mansion, we are not cutting any deals. Yeah. We're not playing poker with your rights on that. We are opposing it, period.
So you're the kind of group that's going to say, hey, if you're doing the right thing, here we are to help. What resources we can provide, here we are. But if they're doing something terrible, you're also going to call them out on their crap pretty quickly, and I think that's important. Yep. That doesn't happen enough in the 2A world in terms of advocacy, right? You know, people have this check in the box type of idea about gun rights, and they think, well, I send in my $20 and I can just walk away and they'll handle it. Now, to some degree, that obviously can be true in some cases if those people are doing really great things with that money and doing the right thing. And but I think at the end of the day, what's really interesting about gun rights groups is that it is a symbiotic relationship between the members and the group itself. So the group becomes the liaison between the Hill and the politicians, but it's still up to the people to light those fires and to get in there and rile things up. And it takes all of us to kind of pitch in on that.
Well, let me describe this because, you know, it's a nonprofit under the IRS rules. Our main organization's a 501c4. Well, who owns a C4? Well, frankly, the members do. All the staff and the board of directors and the leadership of the organization are really just being stewards for the owners. Now, of course, I'm a member of N.A.G.R. and I donate money to N.A.G.R. and I donate money to a lot of gun groups, state level, even other national groups. I'm a life member of GOA. And so,
well, not unlike a church, right? You know, you donate to the church on Sunday, and they keep the light bill paid, and they build the playground for the kids.
They might do a missions trip.
They put the money back into what they're doing.
And so when you say, yes, most members of our organization are activists, and we love that. They're active. They get involved in applying pressure to politicians.
It's not just a job. Like they really are vested in it.
Right. But I'm talking about members like. But we also have little old ladies who are in their 90s who they might not actually be able to even go to the Capitol, certainly, and it's difficult for them to even write a check. Sometimes we'll get that donation, and you'll look at the check and you'll say, "Wow, that handwriting's pretty rough." And our staff open it, and I like to tell them. We tell them often, you know how much that lady probably. That $20 was a lot of money to her, and that's how much she cares. She doesn't own a gun, or she doesn't probably use it anymore, but she cares about the future of your rights, that she writes a check. And we should honor that with spending it efficiently and thanking her. And think about that whenever you go out and spend money for the organization or do something. You're doing it for, yes, kids, it sounds right, but frankly, the people who really committed to it and don't have any personal interest, like they don't have a vault like this.
She knows that, the life that she has lived her entire life and what she has become as a person is at least in some way partly due to our right to bear arms and our ability to protect ourselves. So I really want to thank you for, having this chat with me and telling me a bit about N.A.G.R. I really love the idea of these gun groups, getting in there and doing great work and everything like that. And I know that there's a lot of different ones. I mean, when you look at the state level stuff, national level, it can be confusing for a lot of people. And I really wanted to, make this video so that folks can get an idea of what N.A.G.R. is about and get to know Dudley a bit. And maybe this kind of sheds some light on what they're doing. And if you want to go over and support them, go sign up, donate some money if you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do, what not to do, but I am going to become an N.A.G.R. member. I'm not right now, but I am going to sign up before the day's out, okay? And I think it's important that if, for instance, okay, the end goal for an individual is to say, hey, I'm going to throw 20 or 25 bucks a month towards gun groups A through C, or whoever, right? Whoever it might be. If that's all you're going to do is throw a little money in the pot, that's helpful because that money does add up, right? But at the same time, also get engaged, like ask questions. Like if you join a gun group, give them a call, ask them questions, like see where they're about, research them, right? So a lot of this all comes into that type of a mindset, right? Like we can't defer things. You have to kind of know really like what you're getting yourself into and what you're placing your faith in, because that's really what it comes down to is, a gun rights group at the end of the day is sort of almost like your lobbying arm that you're trusting them to take that money and do good things with it and to get things done. So
hold them accountable. Hold us accountable for what we do. If we make a mistake, we're going to apologize for it. If we notice it, and we're happy to talk to people about what those mistakes are. I do say that after 30 years, we've made more mistakes than most people in politics because you do things and you will make mistakes. But one of the things
you're not going to make a mistake if you don't take a risk.
That's right. So we're not going. One of the things we won't do is cut deals and fashion the chains that bind us. So one things we're trying to push is our YouTube channel. So we'd love to have your subscribers come over and give some of their views to our channel and subscribe.
And what's the channel name?
Yeah, the channel name is National Association for Gun Rights, and you can look up Dudley's Range Rogues is my sub channel there, and that has a lot more of shooting and fun stuff, kind of what you do.
And what are the other socials you're on? You're on Instagram?
We're on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Dudley W. Brown. Twitter is nationalgunrights.org. We have, and then gunrights.org is our website. And there's lots of different ways to keep in touch, of course. We have a big email list. And however you like to take your news.
I'll put all of those social particulars down in the description box so y'all can check them out and, consider joining and supporting their efforts. I mean, we've spent a couple of days together. It's been really fun. We've shot some machine guns, made some videos, and I really wanted to give Dudley in this video a microphone to kind of talk about his organization and, talk a little bit about his past and what we've got going on, and also dispel some of the rumors because, people always want to start the rumor mill, and that happens, to all of us, happens to the best of us.
I got my big boy panties on. So.
That's right. You're a grown man.
Have at it.
That's right. So one last question, and we'll move on with life here, but I wanted to ask one more thing. Briefly, just give me a super brief synopsis. What do you think is in store for the Second Amendment community in the next decade? What would you like to see happen? And realistically, what do you think will happen for us?
Well, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to try and roll back some of President Biden's executive actions. I mean, we're going to be facing these pistol brace executive action that's coming soon. The 80% lowers and homemade firearms, what we like to call it. Those two are certainly infringements, but there are a couple others that came under Republican administrations. The Fix NICS Act that passed under President Trump and he signed was really bad. The bump stock executive action, frankly, was the pattern that Joe Biden's administration is now using. And we think that was, even though I don't own a bump stock, so I don't want to ban them, and ludicrous that we are.
Agreed.
I think we're going to have to take a run at a lot of those. But I'll tell you what is the most insidious is the prohibited persons list on NICS. And the NICS system, we've given into this concept that we have to ask government permission before we buy a gun. Now that happened in the Brady Act, in the original Brady Act on a national basis, and now we're living under that system. But that database is extremely dangerous. And I don't think you have to be a member of the John Birch Society or be a conspiracy theorist to be concerned that they're building lists of gun owners. They're building lists of prohibited persons. And frankly, they don't actually even need to pass bans on guns if they just prohibit more and more Americans from possessing guns, from purchasing those guns.
Yeah, and who's to say that they can't just come up with any arbitrary set of rules they want and say, well, if you ever had a speeding ticket, you can't buy guns. Like, really?
It's one thing to say court adjudicated prohibited person, but we're talking a counselor, a group of semi-professionals, almost any reason, and a lot of that data that's entering into the system via fixed NICS is coming from the states, and it's dirty data. And I don't know how we get rid of it except aggressively go after it. Now, there's a congressman from Texas, McLeod, who came up with did some information and found out about it. And so to me, that's mission number one, is to get rid of and fix all this crap that the federal government is doing via the Brady Act. Now, when I say the Brady Act, it's almost, you could call me a boomer. Even though I'm not quite a boomer, I'm 56, but but yeah, the Brady Act itself is the system we're using, and somehow people just don't understand how insidious that system is.
Somehow we've normalized the idea that we have to ask the government for permission for something that is our right. I mean, constitutional rights, as you look at them in the way that they're written, and you look at the Second Amendment, it's pretty freaking clear in its wording. It's very concise. And when you think about the way it's written, it says exactly what it means, and it doesn't mean anything. It's very clear the way it's written. It's very clear constitutional language, right? I don't understand how it could be taken any other way. It is a strict list of rules that the government cannot. It tells us what the government can't do to us, not what we're beholden to the government for.
And the way to,
but it's been flipped. The tables have been turned.
The way to view it is, if you had the same restrictions on the First Amendment that you have on the Second Amendment, it would be like not like
this
yelling.
Is a high capacity First Amendment device.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Belt fed. So the concept that you hear a lot is, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So there are limits on the First Amendment, but really, gun control is more like duct taping people's mouths before they go into the theater because they might yell fire.
Agreed.
It's prejudicial. And honestly, we really crossed some weird lines, almost science fiction-y lines, especially with red flag laws. I believe the red flag laws are going to be the law that we're going to be fighting, not just at state levels, but federal levels for years to come.
There's lots of work to do.
There's lots of work.
There's lots of work.
Unfortunately.
Dudley, I really appreciate you joining me today on this particular video. I wanted to put this together. And again, big thanks to everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this. Go check out N.A.G.R. Great people. Become a member. Donate some money. It would be awesome. I would appreciate it if you did. I'm sure Dudley will as well. But I'm definitely going to be supporting N.A.G.R. I think they're a great group of people. And especially after spending a few days with you, man, I really think that you guys have the right mindset.
Thank you.
Right. Mindset's important, right? Tactics are important, right? And when we look at 2A advocacy, it is a tactic. Like, we've got to get in the trenches and figure out the best way to win the war. And we might lose some battles here and there, but as long as we win the war, that's all that matters. And that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the big picture, and I think that N.A.G.R. is a very crucial part of that big picture. Go over to Ballistic Ink and pick yourself up a snazzy t-shirt. That's one way you can support us directly if you wish to. And have a great week. We have many more videos on the way. We are not done. We got a lot going on, so we hope you'll stay tuned. Lots of 2A updates, legislative updates, more guest spots. I've actually got a new arrangement that I'm setting up here in the studio, and we're going to be able to have remote guests. So I'm going to finally be able to interview people over the internet, which, yes, okay, I'm not a boomer, but look, it's taken us a while to get with the times on the technology, but I am going to start doing more remote interviews and stuff. So I'm going to bring on a ton of people similar to Dudley and really get some perspective from a lot of different people. And I think that's important.
Sounds fun.
So, and we'll have you back if you'd like to be back.
I'll come back, yeah.
All right. Have a great day. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.